Call the meeting to order. Sorry for the slight delay here. No problem. It's the April 24, 2018 meeting of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission of the Town of Fairfield. First item on our agenda is Bills and Communications, the meeting minutes from April 10, 2018. And see, before we get there, Commissioner Gordon, you were here sitting in for Commissioner Francis, right? So you'll vote on the minutes for her and the old business tonight, all right? And Commissioner McAleese, you are up to speed on the tapes from last meeting? Correct. Okay, thank you. And then I think everybody else sitting was physically there, right? Okay. And Commissioner Francis, you're going to recuse or abstain from minutes and old business, right? Yes? Okay. All right, very good. So meeting minutes, April 10, 2018. Everybody have a copy of that? Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Noonan.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Corcoran. Anybody have any comments on that? They seemed all to be in order to me. Good? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Right, the minutes are adopted unanimously. Next is old business, 571 Bronson Road, re-subdivision application of the estate of Georgia Boria for 2 lots in an A zone.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this site is located in an A zone with an existing lot area of a little over 9,000 square feet, or just under half an acre. There is an existing dwelling and a 2-story barn on the lot. The parcel is proposed to be divided into 2 parcels of 10,242 square feet and 9,381 square feet, respectively. The existing dwelling is proposed to remain on the property in place. And a new dwelling is going to be built in place of the existing 2-story barn. They're proposing to share the driveway with the existing dwelling due to concerns about sight lines for the northerly lot. The agenda packet included a sight line analysis that was submitted at the public hearing. We followed that up with an email from the engineering department saying that they're satisfied with the existing sight line for that current driveway. Both parcels meet the lot area and shape requirements of the zone. Concrete curbs, sidewalks, and driveway aprons, however, are required in this zone and should be shown on the final plan if approved. That is all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. And there was also some question, and I think the applicant affirmed that they would file an easement and make the easement for the shared driveway, right,
Yes.
as part of the deeds, right? So I think that should also be a condition of approval. So can we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve with the conditions stated.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Noonan to approve with conditions as stated by staff and me. Seconded by Commissioner McAleese. Commissioner Noonan?
Good application, met our requirements. I think we sit in our administrative capacity here.
We do.
So nothing really to add beyond that.
Very good. Complies with our regulations, and we sit in our administrative capacity on these, yes. Okay. Any other comments? No. Anyone else? Okay. Motion is to approve with conditions. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. We just have the one, Commissioner Francis, and Commissioner Gordon is sitting for Commissioner Francis.
Yep.
And the motion to approve is approved unanimously. Next is 391, 397 Commerce Drive, special permit and coastal site plan application of 391 Commerce Drive LLC pertaining to the demolition of an existing dwelling and proposed addition to an existing restaurant in the designed industrial district.
Okay, this proposal seeks to demolish, as you just said, an existing 2-family dwelling that's on the property. Relocating the site driveway and constructing an addition to an existing restaurant. The proposal calls for an addition of dining area of 348 feet. A relocation of the building entry to accommodate a waiting area. The Zoning Board of Appeals approved a variance for the net increase in 4 parking spaces that result from this proposal. A new concrete driveway apron and removal of the existing apron and repair of the curb and sidewalk are required and shown on the plan. There is a coastal site plan that was included as part of this application. This site, however, is not in a flood zone and does not contain any sensitive coastal resources. It's almost entirely developed with pavement. So we don't see any negative impact on coastal resources here. The considerations for the special permit are found in section 25.7.7, and I'm sure are very familiar to this commission. This is the development shown on the site and architectural plan of such character as to harmonize with the neighborhood, to accomplish a transition in character between areas of unlike character, to protect property values in the neighborhood, to preserve and enhance the appearance and beauty of the community, and to avoid undue traffic congestion. Aside from the parking issue that was resolved by the ZBA, the plan complies with our requirements.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. May I have a motion?
I move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner McAleese. I'm sorry, Corcoran. Forgive me. Wrong direction. Second by Commissioner Noonan. Okay, Commissioner McAleese. Commissioner Corcoran. I don't know. You got you in my head. I got you switched in my head.
Just focusing in on whether this is architecturally pleasing in the environment where it is. It certainly is. It's a very nice plan. It upgrades the building, and the house that's going to be torn down is kind of an eyesore. So I think this is overall an improvement.
Thank you. Commissioner Noonan?
Nothing more to add. I mean, by looking at the standards and what their application is, it meets the standards, no issues with traffic. Certainly no problems with architecture. Seems to be a better use by demolishing the house. It'll be a better use for the property. And the fact that they have the zoning variance that meets everything else.
Okay.
So I approve.
Good. Okay. Anyone else have any other comments? All right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, given the factors, promoting and preserving property values, harmony with the neighborhood, and all the other factors, I think this is a very well taken and well done application. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? So we have Commissioner Francis abstaining, Commissioner Gordon voting in her place, and the motion to approve passes unanimously. So next is compliances, and so now Commissioner Gordon, you're off, and Commissioner Francis, you're back on. 454 Tunxis Hill Road, application of John Lafreniere to establish a church in a portion of an existing building in the neighborhood design district.
Okay, this site should be familiar to you. It was recently approved by this commission for a martial arts studio a couple meetings ago. That use, however, is not going to be moving forward at this site, as they have renewed their lease at their current location. They had been served notice that they would not have the lease renewed, but that issue has changed. So what's happened now is First Baptist Church, who actually presently meet in this building, in this room, as a matter of fact, is looking to establish a church in that same space, which is a permitted use in the neighborhood design district. As I said, the church currently meets here. The parking required for churches is 1 space for each 5 seats capacity. They have 18 spaces on this site, which would support a maximum occupancy of 90, which is what they show on their plan, but I think their letter indicates, I think they're only presently at about 40 folks, hoping to grow. But they would, they're showing 90 seats on their plan, and that would be their maximum capacity with 18 parking spaces at 1 per 5 seats. So that is the proposal, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Terrific. Thank you. Motion from someone? Yeah. Motion to approve by Commissioner Levy.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Noonan. Commissioner Levy, any comments?
It's obviously
Let's use your mic.
Clearly, it's a good use of the property. The hours that it'll be used will avoid any conflict with the existing business in terms of traffic. And based on that, I think it would be appropriate to approve this.
Excellent, thanks. Commissioner Noonan, anything further?
Meets our regulations.
Yep. This is a permitted use in the zone and should be approved. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The compliance is granted unanimously. Next is our public hearing. Do we need a moment to reconfigure, or are we ready to go? Good. And we'll move right along. So the first is, 1073 North Benson Road, special exception application of Fairfield University pertaining to a 4-story lounge addition in an existing dormitory in the AA zone. Mr. Fallon.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. For the record, my name is John Fallon. I'm pleased to be here tonight representing my client and alma mater, Fairfield University. With me is Mr. David Frasinelli, Vice President for Facilities Management at Fairfield University, Mr. Kurt Krasinski, our Director of Campus Planning and Design, and also Mr. Peter Horton from Newman Architects. The application is pretty straightforward. We're seeking approval, and I'll bring this up here if I might. You have the rendering, so I don't think I have to do my Vanna White, but basically what we're seeking here is approval by way of special exception of the creation of a lounge area of approximately, You don't. I did. I forgot my easel. This could be the start of a whole new career for us. We could go on the circuits, you know. Give me an A. I'll take an I. All right, get serious. We've got approximately 1,300 square foot addition of on grade for a lounge area, and then the plan is for us to build smaller lounges, as you can see here, up on the upper floors. No variances were required here for the height of the building because Campion Hall is compliant with the current standards of the regulations at 37.25 feet. Our proposed addition, which you see here, will also measure out at 37.25 feet. This is an important plan for us, and I'll briefly explain why it's in our statement of use, so I'll try to be brief. Critical to the success of our incoming freshmen is obviously making sure they feel acclimated and connected to the campus. Campion is one of our freshman dorms. It's in our freshman quad area. The first 6 weeks, I am told, are extremely critical in terms of freshmen feeling acclimated and being successful. What these lounges are all about is to help make those freshmen, especially in those early weeks, feel engaged with their fellow students. The lounges, places they will be adjacent to the entrance to this building, in the area where the students will walk from Barone Campus Center, are going to be very welcoming. People are going to see people in there. The current lounges are more or less tracked to the back of the building, sort of isolated. So we found from our experience with some of the other lounges that we've done in the more modern dorms that such a lounge area and such a prominent place provides a good opportunity, especially for our freshmen, to engage, and that's important, especially early on at their career in Fairfield. As far as the addition itself, it's interesting, the zoning regulations, up until they were amended in 1989, allowed buildings, special exception use buildings in the residential zones, to be 5 stories and 60 feet in height. Many dorms that are very proximate to Campion, Gonzaga, Regis, Jogues, were all constructed, and they all currently exist at 4 or 5 stories. So what is important here is what we're proposing is not only going to be consistent, identical in fact, to the height of Campion itself, which is compliant with the current regs, but as a matter of the 4 stories, it will also be very compliant with the surrounding dormitories and this one as well. We did go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, who unanimously on March 1st, 2018, approved a variance of section 5.2.2 to allow this 4-story addition to be constructed to this already existing 4-story building. Peter Horton, as I said, from Newman is here if you should have any into any questions with regard to the design itself, but I thought in the interest of time, it's pretty straightforward. We feel that what we have proposed here is consistent and will harmonize not only with the existing building, but also with the buildings surrounding on the campus. And obviously, based upon the location of this particular building in the central area of our campus, it's not going to have any adverse impacts. It's attractive to begin with, I think, but it's not going to have any adverse off-site impacts in that it's not going to be generally visible to any off-site neighbors. So we hope you'll agree that the addition is sensitively and architecturally designed. It's going to ensure that it's attractive and will harmonize with the existing building and the existing buildings on the campus. Fundamentally, as a matter of program, it's indicative of the university's continued commitment to providing the finest facilities that will contribute positively to the overall quality of student life on campus. And as I said, with some of our newer dorms, we have found that these types of lounges really do address that in a very positive way, and we are anxious to bring that to this building in the freshman quad as well. So be pleased to answer any questions that you might have with regard to the application, and hope you'll favorably consider it.
Thank you. Commissioner Francis? Can you-
Quick question. I heard you say the overall square footage, but what are the dimensions of the new addition?
The dimensions of the new addition, I'm sure we can scale this for you. Peter, could you come up and address that so we get it accurately? The first floor is an additional 1,300 square feet, and then the lounges above are somewhat smaller, but we can certainly give you the information in terms of the footprint, the dimensions.
Approximately across this space.
Can you just use your microphone?
I'm sorry,
Would
Peter
you say
Horton.
3-0?
30, yes.
Okay.
Roughly, the upper box is about 30 by 30. This south wall here extends about 40 feet.
Oh, so
It's very small.
it's certainly not too big. I thought it was bigger than that. Okay.
No.
And then what does FFE 117.00 mean? What does FFE
Finished
mean?
floor elevation. The finished floor elevation,
Thank you.
the elevation off the ground.
No, I've heard of it meaning furniture, fixtures, and equipment, but I
No,
thought,
no,
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 it's
no,
not
yeah,
talking
that
about
ND.
that. Okay, thank you. I like to learn something.
Very good. Does anyone else have any other questions for Mr. Fallon or any of the professionals? Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Fallon.
much. Do you want this, Jim?
Does any member of the public wish to be heard on this application? Going once, going twice. Good. Very good. I'll close a public hearing on this application. Next, items C2 and 3 are related. I'll call them together. There's a zoning regulation amendment, application of Dog On It LLC to amend section 21.2.14 of the zoning regulations pertaining to dog daycare in the Design Industrial District, and 104-116 Fifth Street, special permit application of Dog On It LLC to establish a dog daycare use in an existing building in the Design Industrial District.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm John Fallon. I'm pleased to be here to represent the applicant tonight. With me are the principals of the applicant, Al and Lisa Kelly, who are seated in the front row, and Mr. Pat Rose, who's our architect and also did our site plan here for this existing use. Dog On It LLC makes the application. There are two applications in front of you. We're hearing them both in a combined hearing. The first is for a text amendment, which I'll talk about briefly in a minute, and the second is for a special permit and site plan approval in order to allow a dog daycare facility to be located at the property at 104-116 Fifth Street, which is located in the Design Industrial District. By way of background, on August 25, 2015, the Commission approved an identical zone regulation amendment establishing dog daycare as a permitted use in the Design Commercial District. That is section 12.4.28.7. That amendment, which is the same amendment that's before you tonight for application in the Design Industrial District, provide that such a use would be allowed provided there'd be no overnight kenneling, no more than one dog per 50 square feet of indoor space. That provision be made for an outdoor run connected therewith, which must be fenced, that the facility must be inspected and licensed by the state of Connecticut, and that no such use could abut a residential district.
Attorney Fallon, what was
Yes.
that previous site?
Pardon?
What was the previous site you're saying is similar?
This-
It's section 12.4.28.7. 12.4.287, it was adopted by the commission on August 25, 2015.
Thank you.
So, what we propose here and request is that that amendment, which is verbatim identical to what is found in section 12.4.28.7, be made a part of the regulations in the design industrial district and subject to the same provisions identically as I referenced before that were originally adopted for the allowance of this use in the design commercial district. And that's the text amendment. So we haven't tinkered with it at all. We just ask it to be applied, extended to the design industrial district. Now, with regard to the specifics of Doggone It, it'll operate generally Monday through Sundays from 6:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. With extended hours offered as needed for customers, and will employ 2 to 4 employees depending on the business volume. As I said, provided by the regulation, if you grant the text amendment, obviously all those aspects of the regulations will be complied with, including no overnight kenneling will be allowed. I think as you found in 2015, there is a significant demand for dog daycare services in Fairfield, particularly for couples and individuals who work and have pets. They're often faced with a difficult decision in terms of keeping their pet, having their pet stay alone, unattended, all day long. It's difficult and sometimes confusing, complicated, finding people and costly who will come into the house and walk the dogs and so on. So dog daycare is something that's strongly in demand in Fairfield, and this extension into the design industrial district will allow a further opportunity through dog daycare to address that need. Mr. Rose is here. The site plan is very straightforward. The building is existing. We'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have, but basically this is a use that you found to be appropriate subject to the conditions that you established. 3 years ago for the design commercial district, we simply asked for the extension of that use into the design industrial district. And we'd be pleased to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Fallon.
Mr. Corcoran.
Commissioner Corcoran.
Mr. Fallon, are there any residences adjacent or near this property?
No, sir. They're all, there are some across the street, I think, correct? Yeah, but nothing adjacent, correct?
Yeah, and that would be my question, was just to confirm for the record that the application that you've presented complies with all of the requirements
Right.
of the proposed regulation that you have.
Those residential uses are non-conforming uses, correct?
Yeah,
Property is surrounded by design industrial property.
right.
So this is for daycare only?
Correct.
What if a dog isn't picked up?
I mean, I think in that particular instance, that's never happened that we are aware of. They run the, but you know, if it was, we'd have to make proper. With the regulations say that we can't kennel dogs overnight. So the Kellys would have to make some arrangements to transport that dog to their home and then contact the owner.
Right.
But if you know people who know their dogs, that's not usually likely.
Well, I also am a dog owner who deals with kennel, and you kennel the dogs when you're, have things to do, and sometimes life takes over. Do they have experience running a dog daycare?
They do through their home. They have been doing that, but on a much smaller scale. They love animals, but they're well trained at doing this, and this is sort of a dream for them, both from a business standpoint and a passion standpoint. And but they do have experience, yes.
And how many dogs would the facility enable, or what's the capacity of
The regulations don't allow more than 1 per 50. Do you have any idea? 1 per 50 square feet?
The application that's in front of us,
Yeah. How many dogs
the
would you
proposed
imagine?
facility. Can you just repeat that?
Maximum of 30,
30?
which does comply with the regulation we ask you to extend.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
So that space is 1,500 square feet then?
Pardon?
So that space is 1,500 square feet?
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't have the drawing in front of me, just
Oh,
check.
yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Mr. Rose can address that or confirm.
Thank you.
Pat Rose from Rose Tizo and Company. The building itself is 26 50 square feet. Where we're housing the dogs, about 1,500, a little more square feet, plus we've got the exterior runs.
You say plus the outdoor runs, right?
Yeah, correct.
Very good. Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Francis?
What was the most recent use in this property?
The most recent use of this property was as a contractor's storage yard.
Nothing I'd be familiar with. Okay, thanks.
All right. Anything else? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fallon.
Thank you.
And thanks to the applicant and others that are here. Any members of the public wish to be heard on this? Going once, going twice? Very good. And with that, I'll close the public hearing on items C2 and 3. Next item on our agenda is 1675 Post Road, zoning compliance application of 1675 Post Road Partners LLC pertaining to a 13-unit residential development pursuant to Section 830G of the Connecticut General Statutes in the Center Design District. The trifecta.
Now, if we could do this one in 15 minutes, if we could do this in 15 minutes, it would really be a new record. I'll probably retire and just say I did 3 hearings. I did 3 hearings in a half an hour one night, and then they showed me to the door. Okay, but the good news is, subject to your questions, obviously, I really think we can do that, because what this is, excuse me, guys, thank you. I didn't mean to take
Thank you.
your...
Yeah, hey, listen, it's better coming from you than me.
So what this is, as you know, is simply under 8-30G, there's a provision 8-30GH that says that if an application is denied, the applicant can file a modified application to attempt to address the concerns that led to the denial. And when that is done, all aspects of the original application, testimony, reports, documents, records, become part of this application. It's almost like a continued application. So what that means, mercifully I hope, is I'm not going to go through the entire application again. This commission was very diligent in considering and listening to the last application and the testimony that we offered. You all know that what led to the denial was the concern with regard to the original proposal as it related to the first floor retail area, and a consensus that was reached by the commission that 8-30G should not allow or provide for such a mixed-use development. So what we've done in response to that is revised the plan to eliminate the retail use on the first floor and to add 1 additional residential unit on the first floor. That will increase the total number of residential units from 12 to 13. The affordable requirement under the statute, 30%, remains the same, 4 units to be devoted to the affordable standards that are outlined in the conformance affordability plan, the compliance affordability plan. So what we've submitted tonight is a revised compliance affordability plan, which is otherwise identical to the original plan that was submitted to you, except for the addition of 1 residential unit by way of the elimination of the retail. I'd want to state for the record, this record, as I did for the previous record, that we would agree and stipulate that the affordable units to be specifically designated will be those units recommended for such designation by the Affordable Housing Committee in their letter of support for this application, which you originally received and which, as I said, is part of this record before you. We also submitted a revised traffic report. It too is the same, except it analyzes whether or not there'd be any impact from a traffic perspective from the elimination of 1,500 square feet of retail and the addition of one residential unit. And the conclusions of the report is that that change of use on the first floor will not have any negative traffic impact.
Can you just summarize for us what that impact is in real numbers? Like the number of parking spaces went from X to Y, whether it's still accommodated, what the impact is on the traffic flow, number of cars, if there's any change in the levels of service and delay or anything like that.
We have our traffic engineer here tonight. You had the report of Frederick Free Clark and Associates, but we'll give you the brief summary to that.
Yes. Commissioner Noonan?
I have one technical question I want to ask, and then myself.
Okay. Well, I might kick you.
That's fine. The concern that comes to mind is you're relying upon previous record.
It's part of this record, actually. But
Yeah.
yes.
Well, under this 830G.
Correct.
Sub H.
My concern initially is procedurally is you determined that previous one not to be an affordable unit application. And I just don't want, maybe it's too much of a, maybe I'm being too strict in my interpretation, but the previous one wasn't, we determined not 830G.
It's a fair question, I think, to ask Mr. Fallon in terms of his legal interpretation of the impact. He's stated for the record that that's what he's filed under the auspices of 830G sub H.
Correct.
And it's for us to decide in executive session whether we agree with his representation and his
And what I would say, Mr. Noonan, is there's nothing in your determination, as you've related it, that doesn't allow you, without having to sit here for 3 hours, to consider in the context of the standards of 8-30G, the evidence that you heard with regard to traffic, other aspects, the evidence that is part of your record in terms of the approval of the application by the Affordable Housing Committee, the fire marshal, and the like. I can go through all that again, but I don't think that's necessary or warranted, because I think 8-30GH is applicable here. If you feel differently,
No, I don't know what I feel one way or the other. I was somewhat expecting a full presentation, and the sub H, I was not too familiar with. I think I'd bring it up more as, I am not going to make a decision one way or the other right now. I bring it up more for your benefit, that's somewhat of a yellow flag that jumps to mind. If, and I'm looking out to the public and I don't see anybody, if, for example, somebody were to come up and say, well, I have no idea what you said last time, I was expecting a hearing, I don't...
Mr. Reber was here.
I know Mr. Reber.
And he remembers. I would say this, Mr. Newman, I respect and appreciate your diligence, but based upon my familiarity with the statute, and really in consideration of the commission's time, I mean,
That's a fair point, too.
I just...
I'm bringing it up as a...
I think that you're entitled to take into consideration. I mean, look, I can sit up here again and go through, lecture this commission about a lecture they don't need about the standards of 8-30G, that the application can only be denied if there is substantial evidence in the record that there would be some significant impact on public health and safety that outweighs the need for affordable housing. I can go through all that, but this is a sophisticated commission, and I think the reason 8-30GH is in there is to allow the commission the ability to see how their concerns are addressed without having to regurgitate the whole application. I appreciate that, but if the rest of the commission is comfortable, I am certainly comfortable with proceeding in accordance with 8-30GH and saying that all of the other documents, reports, staff reports, by that I mean fire, Affordable Housing Committee, everything that was previously submitted with regard to this, the original application should be considered part of the record in your consideration of this new modified application as it relates to the one change. That's right.
Exactly.
Okay? So the question, Steve, I'll let you introduce yourself and just address a summary of the findings of the traffic report with regard to what impacts exist or do not from the change of the use on the first floor from retail to one residential.
Yes, thank you.
Good evening. For the record, Steve Cipolla, Frederick Clark Associates. We conducted a update to our original traffic study to account for the increase from 12 to 13 residential units and and taking out the 1,500 square feet of retail. Based on that, the 13 apartments would generate 7 trips in the morning, 8 trips in the afternoon, and 7 trips on Saturday, which is a reduction from the previous proposal of 1 to 2 trips based on peak hours. And based on the results of the analysis, during all 3 time periods, there will be level of service will be maintained with minimal increase in delay. So based on the updated traffic study for the 13 residential units, there will not be any significant impacts to Ruane Street and the intersection of US Route 1 at Ruane Street.
Very good. Does anyone have any questions for, I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Steve Cipolla.
Mr. Cipolla. Does anyone have any other questions for Mr. Cipolla? Okay. And if you could address the parking, the impact on the number of parking spaces and any changes there.
Do you want to address that, Steve? The parking is unchanged from the application you saw before. We're maintaining the same number of parking spaces, which will give us the benefit of 1 space per each unit of housing. We have 13 spaces on site. That is consistent with the standard, as I said at the last hearing, for parking that was adopted in your own regulations for part of that transit-oriented development. I made the point then, I'll make it now, that I think that's consistent here because the proximity of the railroad station is the same as it would be for the transit-oriented. So we are not changing the parking.
And how about fire safety?
We
The
have-
conversion of commercial to a residential unit?
Mr. Joe Versteeg, who is our fire code compliance consultant, former head of the state fire marshal's office. We asked him to look at that, and he's here to address that question.
Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, Joe Versteeg. Yeah, the addition of or replacement of the 1 residential unit at the grade floor in lieu of the mercantile does not add any additional concerns to this building in any respect. In fact, the addition of a grade level residential unit is far better than one on an upper level floor. And the concerns of the building official and fire marshal during the last go-around were predominantly the proximity of the building to the adjacent building, and that was addressed and remains unchanged. The construction type of the building and all of the fire protection features remain exactly the same.
Okay.
And in that regard, Mr.
Yep.
Chairman, I would want to just again point out that you do have, again, as part of the extended record, the approval, I think it was dated January 25, it's a memo from the fire marshal to Mr. Wendt, approving the plan and the design based upon our modification of the site plan to address that separation issue. And you'll also recall that as part of the application then and now, we agreed not only to sprinkler the building, but we also agreed, I should have introduced Mr. Matt Finkel and Mr. Rich Granoff, who are the principals of the applicant. And we made an agreement, Mr. Finkel owns the Bishop Curtis house next door that is and will continue to be maintained for senior housing. And as part of our agreement with the fire marshal, we've agreed to sprinkler that building as well as this one.
And I think we have a written statement in the record that the owner of the
You
other
do.
building would...
There's a letter from the other entity to that effect, which is part of your record.
Very good. Commissioner Levy?
And just so it's clear, the sprinkling of the adjoining building would be an agreeable condition to any approvals.
Yes,
that
and in
were
fact,
forthcoming.
your record already has a letter from that entity, which is controlled by Mr. Finkel, but is a different entity, that owns the Bishop Curtis house, confirming their agreement to such a condition with regard to this application.
Commissioner McAleese?
Wasn't there some kind of, I don't know if agreement is the right word, but some arrangement regarding the parking as well? Like, there's a lot at the back of the building that's owned by the church or the
Yes,
property
and
next door?
that's all, not owned by, but that's all documented for purposes of the record. It's not owned by the church, it's basically our property.
It's not part of this property, it's part of the other property, the neighbor, right?
Correct.
Part of the adjacent property, and is there like, yeah, could you describe how that works again?
Yeah, is all the parking directly on our site, or? Yeah, to answer your question, there's an easement in place, and that was made part of the record with regard to these spaces being utilized for this development, and that's on your site.
So those spaces, I'm sorry, so those spaces are not on the lot on which the building is being built?
They're on the adjacent lot, which is owned by the other entity, but they are subject to an easement of record that allows the use for parking.
Okay. And those spaces, although subject to an easement, are not permitted to be used by others on the adjacent lot. They are exclusive to use by the residents of the building.
Always have.
Right.
Pardon?
Well, it seems to me like that's the only way it works, that's the only way you get your 13 spaces,
Yes.
so it could be a safety, that street is already packed and crowded, and so I just want to be sure we're covered there.
And that's been reviewed, but to utilize this for the parking as we are proposing.
Okay.
We have that right.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, so I understand what you're saying, but, I mean, is there something written, an agreement that's cut in stone so that suddenly other people are parking there, like Sunday? I could see a whole series of church, masses, and people do.
Yeah, there is a document, and I believe it's already part of the record.
You might want to use a microphone.
The answer is, the property, the adjacent property has always been subject to the parking easement that is reflected on this plan. It's a matter of land record easement. It's been there long preceding this. And, we have the prior owner, and we will also, maintain this area, police it, so we've never had a problem with overflow parking. We don't allow it, but these spaces are of right to be used by this particular proposal.
Okay, so I guess here's my concern. Maybe it's a far out scenario, but when I drove by to check the site out, it took me a few minutes, 3 or 4 minutes. I missed a light to turn right off of Post Road to go down Ruane because somebody was pulling in. So if you have 13 residents pulling in during the rush hour at the end of the day, and there's some school activity at the church, and then there's something at the dance place across the way, does that potentially back traffic up onto Post Road, which is a crazy zooey road that could be a risk? So that's what that's why I think and I guess you answered it. If the easement says that's their parking, nobody else is parking there, that's only those residents,
Correct.
Then they can get in and out of the garage fast, and they're not backing up traffic on
And
Post
our
Road.
plan includes signage to that effect, so
Okay.
that'll be maintained. But that's not a new situation we're creating, and that's always been the case with regard to the business use for the existing building, and it's never been a problem.
So the existing building has that whole lot, just them. Nobody else uses it right now.
Correct, and that's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Parked myself. Other questions? I have a few. I want to have Mr. Granoff just review the site plan and the architectural plans highlighting what's changed.
Correct.
In order to accommodate the first floor use. Before I do that, so I don't forget, because I touched on the affordability plan before. I've already covered the fact that we've agreed and continue to agree that the designation of the affordable units will be the same as recommended and requested by the Affordable Housing Committee, which is in their letter. I will state for the record, I think the statute requires it, that all the parking shall be equally and proportionally distributed for the affordable and market rate units, and all the amenities will be the same for the market rate units and the affordable units. The other thing that was pointed out to be by Mr. Reber is we designate Affordable Holdings LLC as the manager under the affordability plan to ensure compliance with the affordability plan. He points out that we should have an individual who would be a contact point rather than an entity. That would be Mr. Finkel, and we will amend the plan accordingly so that his name and specific contact information is given. What I'd like to do, as I said now at this point before I summarize, is just ask Mr. Granoff to just review with you the changes to the architectural plans and the site plan occasioned by the
Good evening, Rich Granoff from Granoff Architects, and I'm also a principal in 1675 Post Road LLC. So it's very straightforward. Nothing has changed in this building other than the first floor retail space was converted to a 2-bedroom apartment. Nothing else has changed. This is the old proposal, and as you see, there's retail signage at the first floor and windows that go to the ground. And the current proposal is the windows would start up at 5 feet off the ground, so there's no safety issue. And we have landscaping around so someone can't go right up to against the windows. There's a 2-foot planting bed there. That's from the exterior of the building, looking from this angle. And then looking from this angle here, there is it's very hard to see, but there's a enclosed patio, which I'll show you on the plan that'll make sense. That's also going to be screened and landscaped. 5-foot high wall, same thing. Okay, so in the previous plan, retail space, excuse me, had doors at the street, no connection to the lobby, obviously. And the current plan, basically, there's no connection to the street, as we talked about. There's a planting bed here. And off the lobby, there's actually a vestibule, so there's no door opening from the lobby into the apartment. There's a vestibule that takes you to the back, which is an entrance to the apartment, which is 2 bedrooms. It's a living room that actually has sliding glass doors out to this garden terrace that I just described. It is 10 feet deep by 25 feet long. Very nice space. And these windows are all, as I said, starting at 5 feet above the ground. You've got a living room, kitchen, and 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. Very straightforward. And the site plan hasn't changed.
So the entry to that new apartment is adjacent to the elevator, that little hallway there?
Well, this door takes you to a vestibule. That's actually a fire egress as well. And then there's a door to the apartment there. So this is not the entrance to the apartment. Technically, this is the entrance to a vestibule.
I
It
see.
also serves as a vestibule for this fire stair to egress out.
Right.
So
And then,
purposely giving it some privacy.
sure.
Yeah.
So there's a space in between, the lobby and the door to the apartment.
Correct.
But then once you open the door to the apartment, you've got another little entryway.
It's an entryway with
Yeah.
a closet and a window. That's just because the face of the apartments here,
Sure.
the entrance is here, so.
Yep, sure.
Yeah.
So about 1,500 square feet of,
It's 1,140 square foot apartment,
1140.
two bedroom.
Very good. Okay. Commissioner Corcoran had a question.
Yeah, I have three questions on
Sure.
the plans. The first one, on this sheet, there are still the lights there that were sort of the, over the first floor that looked like they were associated with the, with the mercantile establishment. You're going to leave them there?
That's actually a good point. We probably don't need them anymore. You could say they'd be good for security on the corner, but we're not really going there. So, if the commission has an opinion on that, you know.
No, I just was wondering why you would leave them if there's no store there anymore.
Well,
I think we were leaving them as much as little safety, security, and also some aesthetics.
yes.
But if the commission feels differently, it's not vital to our plan. I don't have a vote, but I kind of like them. I think it does add a little something, and I think in the evenings, I think some tenants would appreciate having some lighting as well as
Well, it's a commercial district as well, and it makes it sort of appear more of a sort of foot traffic-y kind of thing.
So then if you're keeping them and it's not associated with a store, I mean, why don't they extend all the way down?
Well, because there's more pedestrian traffic happening here than down by the parking garage.
I just wanted to bring it up. The second thing is, last time I had an issue with the parapet up there. Either it's going to have a railing on top of it, or it's going to be higher, and we talked about that.
Yes, we made it high. We resubmitted those drawings. We resubmitted and clarified. There were a couple of discrepancies in the plans.
Right.
Yes.
So this is without the change. Okay. And then the last thing is, there's a north elevation here, and I'm not sure it changes anything, but when I look at this north elevation, I can see the new terrace for the apartment and the windows higher. But what is all this?
That is, well, it's the alley, and it's the piece of the building that's poking out on the side here.
Well, I realize this is not a right angle, so you're seeing down the...
Correct.
And I
It's
understand what this
angle,
is, but I don't understand what all this is.
That's just things that are in existence. It's architectural representation.
But there's no building back there. Chris, did you...
Yeah, I agree. I think it looks as if it looks as if you're trying to represent the obtuse angle, but it's not.
Yeah, so you can disregard basically the elevations in the front. It's just
Yeah, if you look at the plan, it stops at the brick. You know what I mean? The right side of that facade stops at the brick. This stuff is really should be all over here.
it's because the elevation is taking a diagonal to the street, which is on an angle.
Okay.
So it gives you a weird. You can disregard it. I think it was.
And then I have one comment. When I was looking at this second rendering here from the street, you know, I looked at this, and it sort of looks like the peak of the old convent is about the same height as the building.
Yes.
But because when you're this close to the building looking up, it would appear that these have similar masses. But when you actually go there, and if you go across the street or further away, you get a very different view. That this is a much, much bigger building than it would appear in this kind of view. Now, you can see that in the elevations, but the elevations don't show neighboring buildings to scale. So I'm not sure. When I first saw this, I thought, well, this is great. This is the way it would look from the street. But it only looks this way from the street if you're up close to it.
Well, that's one representation. Certainly, we can take it across the street.
Just a comment.
But when we started designing, the truth is, we said let's not go higher than the church peak. That was one of the design objectives.
Commissioner Francis had a question.
What's the distance between the Bishop Curtis home and this building?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
It's the distance between the two buildings. It's 10 foot. 10 foot 0 inches, and it was closer, if you remember, and we kept moving it back, and ultimately with the fire marshal, that was a dimension that he was comfortable with as far as getting ladders in there.
Right.
It was a very specific dimension.
Yeah. And how far is your building from the property line of that 10 feet?
From Post Road property line, or?
No, the in between the two buildings.
It's 10 foot 0 inches.
I thought you said it was 10 feet between them. There's a property line between them, isn't there?
It's clearly dimensioned, it's 10 foot 0 inches from the property line to our building.
Okay.
So the other building, if I recall, is about 2.5 feet back from there.
Oh.
So we're actually 12.5 feet
Okay, that's my question.
approximately. There's a jog in that building also, so it changes, but
And
the discussion with the fire marshal made it that we were 10 feet back from the property line.
Right. And what is the height of your building compared to the Bishop Curtis homes?
It's right at the exact height of the peak of the gable on Bishop Curtis.
But that's only the front part of the
Oh,
building.
I thought
As
you
go
said
further
church.
back, it's higher.
Not church, no.
It is level with the Bishop Curtis home?
With the peak of the gable of that building.
It's only the front part of the building. The back part of the building is higher.
Right.
But we have a flat roof, and that's a gabled roof, so. And I agree, the perception of a flat roof building up close is going to be higher, but as you get further back, you'd see that alignment. So.
Okay. All right. Any other questions about the site plans? Okay. Thank you very much. Yep. Commissioner Meyer. I think you're, I don't know if you're on. How close is the building to Ruane
Setback
Street?
of the building to the street, Ruane Street?
Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Michael Batola, licensed land surveyor, professional engineer here in the state of Connecticut, member of the Huntington Company. Wayne Street. The front corner up at the Post Road is just under 2 feet. It's 1.8 feet. That's the closest corner. 1.8 feet, approximately a foot 10 inches. From the property line, not from the street.
Property
from the
line.
property line itself.
Right. Can you measure off, Mike, from that, how far the building is from the actual street?
Like are you asking about like the asphalt? Or the curb?
If it's a sidewalk, how wide is that sidewalk?
It'll be 5 feet.
5 feet.
Proposed new sidewalk will be 5 feet.
Plus a tree belt?
Beg your pardon?
Plus a tree belt?
So the building, so you got the
there's plans
building,
for it.
then you got a 5-foot sidewalk, and then you've got curb, and then the blacktop.
All the setbacks are the same from last application? Building hasn't moved.
No change.
Any other questions, site plan? Okay, thank you.
So, again, a few summary comments. I think the application is a good application. I think we have all agreed, and this commission has addressed on numerous occasions the fact that there is a demonstrated need for affordable housing in Fairfield. Only 2.6% of our housing units are affordable. We did try to work collaboratively and affirmatively with the Affordable Housing Committee on this application, and we're appreciative of their recommendation for approval, which you originally received. We think this is a particularly excellent location for such multifamily residential housing based upon its proximity as part of the downtown and to the railroad station. It's going to serve a very significant housing need in our town for people who I think are over the age of 50 who want to stay in Fairfield, for younger people who want to stay in Fairfield, and opportunities for workforce housing involving town employees. At the end of the day, the application is brought pursuant to 8-30G. This commission knows the implications of that. The affordable housing statute basically says that a denial of the application requires the commission demonstrating by its burden that based upon substantial evidence of the record before the commission, that the decision is necessary to protect the substantial public interest in health, safety, or other matters which the commission may legally consider, and that such public interests clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing, and that such public interests cannot be protected by reasonable changes to the affordable housing development. We accept and respect your determination that the 8-30G application could not contain a non-residential component. It could not be mixed use. We have filed pursuant to 8-30GH this modification, which is the subject of this application tonight, to address that stated reason for denial. And we believe that the application now fully complies with the provisions, intent, and legal underpinnings of 8-30G. We also believe that it's a good application for the town. It addresses affordable housing in an area and at a location that is well suited for it. And we hope that the commission will agree and approve the application as modified and brought to you tonight so that we can move forward with this plan. And we'd be pleased to answer any questions that you might have that we haven't addressed already.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions of Mr. Fallon or the applicant? Okay. Thank you very much. Any member of the public wish to be heard on this item?
Jan Reber, Beaumont Street. I think this really is a valid 830G application. I just want to thank you for the thought you put in last time. Instead of just moving ahead, you really were very thoughtful about it. I'm here to support this application. I don't think public opinion matters very much in this type of 830G application, but I think the public needs to support what seems to be a really well thought out plan by a developer who's coming to you with a plan that's respectful of the neighborhood, respectful of the town, a building that's not as big as they could have tried to make it, and I think they deserve our public support. This project to me is exactly what 830G was meant to be, where relief from some zoning regulations was necessary to make a building big enough for a developer to make a profit. I just also want to thank Attorney Fallon. He's always submitted recently good affordability plans. He's always willing to look to the detail, and that support's been very helpful for us in the public who are concerned about affordable plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reber. Any other members of the public wish to be heard? Going once, going twice. Hearing none. Mr. Fallon, would you like to rebut Mr. Reber? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing on this item, and I will adjourn the meeting.
45 minutes, John.